support. Give us a subscribe. Help me hit 300 subs, 500 subs by New Year's Eve, and who knows what I might do. Hello and welcome. It is October 26th. It is 1 o'clock, and I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM, with another OGGM thought experiment adventure. And I know that I unabashedly hate on 5th edition D&D a lot. I mean, I hate on the Critical Role fans. I hate on the murder hobos. I just very rarely have anything good to say about 5th edition D&D. And yet I play tested it, and I'm so excited when it came to the market. So there's got to be, and I still, well, up until recently, still play it. But, I mean, there's got to be something good about it, right? So I'm going to try and focus on what's good, what I still like about 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And there's not a lot. And the more I play it, the more I run it, the more I'm just like, it doesn't do it for me anymore. And we know that. We've talked about that a lot. And I spend about 80% of my time complaining about 5th edition and the wherewithal of that which 5th edition has sort of created. But there's got to be something positive. So, what is positive to me, and what's a positive to me might be completely different than positive to someone else about 5th edition? Well, the main thing, take away everything else, wash away everything else, it is that feeling of nostalgia, that feeling of going back home. When I started the playtest of 5th edition D&D Next, when I opened up the first actual printing of the Player's Handbook for 5th edition, when I played my first 5th edition game, it felt like going back home. After spending 15 years playing in TJ Storm's 2nd edition, 3rd edition D&D game, and playing D&D on and off again pretty much since it came out, 4th edition and Pathfinder never felt like Dungeons & Dragons to me. Dungeons & Dragons hadn't felt like Dungeons & Dragons to me for a long time. I hadn't felt that sense of nostalgia, that sense of being back home, the sense of, I'm in the Forgotten Realms again. I'm playing and running things that I loved for so long. But when I became first inundated with the 5th edition, before the Critical Role, before everything else, it was just like this refreshing wash of crystal clear water and fresh air over me, just a sense of being wrapped up in a warm blanket, just a sense of that nostalgia bubbling up. Everything about it felt like coming home, while still having the ideas from Pathfinder and 4th that were part and parcel appropriate for the current mindset of D&D. Obviously, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is not geared towards me. I am not the target audience. Old fucks like me are not the target audience. The OSR players are not the target audience. But still, it felt like I was welcome, which I never felt in 4th, and I never really felt in Pathfinder. And I played 4th, and I played a lot of Pathfinder. I tried running Pathfinder, but Pathfinder felt too crunchy, too clunky, and the more and more splat books they threw at it, it just more and more felt like sort of like just a mess. 5th edition with just the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeons Master's Guide, and that feeling like this is all I need again, really made me feel come back home. The second thing I liked about it is how little product there was for Dungeons & Dragons at first. And for the first 2-3 years, they played their cards very close to their chest, and I really appreciated it. They didn't throw out splat book after splat book after splat book every 3 months like they were with Magic, or like you saw with video games, or you saw with Pathfinder and other games that were currently out at that time. There was like splat. They were very, very watching the market, watching the fan base, watching the reactions, watching how people reacted to Geek and Sundry and Critical Role and the stuff that was on the YouTube. The product release was very slow, very steady, very intentional, very well thought out. So when the first module came out, there was a long enough time between Minds of Pendelhaven and the first product, and what they were going on, the story they were looking to tell, and the Forgotten Realms source book, that you could just do very simple games with the 3 core books, which were way too expensive, and feel, again, that sense of, this is all I need. I could run this. They weren't trying to just make me choke on product after product. I had time to get used to the game, to feel comfortable with the game, to experiment and see what I could and could not do before they started saying, okay, here's the first experiment, here's the second experiment, here's the third experiment. The third thing I liked was Unearthed Arcana. The fact that they experimented with stuff before they made it official. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people thought that the online stuff was official and tended to bring it to the table, especially the Arcanist story. I've told that before. But they were, before they were splat booking, they were playtesting. They were saying, okay, what do you think of this? Does this work? Please tear it apart. Let us know. And their mentality of that and the way they released products, I really appreciated that, because it really gave us a time to get used to 5th edition. It really gave us a time to teach people 5th edition, learn 5th edition. I liked the fact that it was a thing I liked. At first I didn't like it in 4th, but then I grew to like it, and I liked the fact that there was the short rest and a long rest. Now, obviously, it is a mechanic that it can be abused, but the fact that, all you needed to do was rest for 20 minutes and eat a sandwich and you could be okay, really took the burden of healing off the cleric and the druid, and allowed them, it's the same with 4th, allowed the heal bots to start to shine. You really got to see what a cleric and a druid could do if they weren't just always responsible for being the heal bot, the walking band-aid. I mean, I've always said cleric is the most broken class in the game because there's nothing they can't do if played right. And 5th edition and 4th, but we're only talking about 5th. 5th edition, because it had the short rest and the long rest, and it had other ways for the other characters to heal themselves and buff themselves, you really finally got a chance to see in 5th edition what a cleric could do if it wasn't just constantly being asked to heal, and what a druid could do if it wasn't constantly asked to heal. I think those are a couple things they got right. I like the fact that the spells were recognizable, the monsters are recognizable. We had tensors, floating discs, we had beholders, we had things that we knew. It was taking place in the Forgotten Realms, a world we were all comfortable with. It was very grateful for the constant attention it was getting in the media for Stranger Things and Critical Role, until I actually dealt with the negativity of Critical Role, because it was bringing people back to the game, and it was bringing new people to the game, and it was showing a revitalized interest in the hobby. And it was constantly being asked, what is a good game for my kid to play? He saw this Stranger Things and he wants to play D&D, but he's 7, and it gave me a chance to say, you know what, that's D&D's okay, but here are some other games that might be more appropriate for your 7-year-old. So it really allowed me at first to spark interest, especially in younger players and parents, in the fact that, we can teach people how to play this game and use this game as an educational tool, but also that there are other games out there that can do the same thing better. 5th edition, this is a backhanded compliment, allowed me to become aware of the DIY and the OSR movement. I mean, I knew about it, but I wasn't really knee deep into it. But 5th edition really allowed me to see, once again, much like with the OGL, there's so much other stuff out there, and why aren't we embracing it? 5th edition's great. 5th edition is the torchbearer. 5th edition is bringing people back to the table, bringing people back to the shop, showing people interested again, getting the word out in the media. Now is the time to start championing these other titles and go, yes, you could do this, but why don't you try this as well? So that was really great at first. Now, obviously, we know from my various stories, it didn't come out this way. But these were the things I liked. Wizards felt like wizards again. Clerics felt like they could finally be clerics and not just heal bots. Druids felt like they could be druids again and not just bear tanks. Rangers, paladins, Yeah, but we're not talking about the things I don't like. I mean, yes, there are definitely, as we know, things I don't like, but these are the things I like. So once again, I liked, first and foremost, and still, I like the feeling of nostalgia of going back home. This is where I belong. The 5th edition first gave me when it first came out. I liked the tentative release pattern of product, that they didn't try and just drown the market first. They were very much like, let's see what happens. I like the fact that they were constantly playtesting with the Unearthed Arcana stuff and constantly saying, what do you think of this experiment? Is this something you want to see or not? I like that they, added even though the short rest, long rest is stupid, it allowed clerics and druids to be clerics and druids finally, as opposed to just heal bots. I like that. There are definitely things I like about 5th edition. The system, the 5th edition system, is as good as D&D is going to get, I think. I don't know what they have planned for 6th edition. I assume we'll see some hints of it with the Tasha's Uncontrollable, Hideous, whatever. But for me, I don't think you can beat 5th edition. Is 5th edition a worthy successor to 3.5? Or was Pathfinder the worthy successor to 3.5? I think Pathfinder, before it went insane, probably was the next step in the evolution of D&D, the engine. But now, of course, I don't think that. I think that if we're just looking at D&D as what it is, D&D, and only D&D can be D&D, and you can only do D&D with D&D, I don't see it getting better than 5th edition. I mean, I love that Wizards actually have hit dice. As much as I loved Wizards having a D4, and I am one of the few people who did, because god damn it, if you made it past first level, you were hardcore if you only had a D4 hit points. Because chances are your hit points were 1. And I was like, yes, I made it to 2nd level. I am fucking hardcore. So, yeah, there's lots of system stuff I like. There's lots of things that when it first came out. Now, finally addressing the whole SJW, Tasha's Uncontrollable, Hideous Book of Splat. I like what they're trying to do. I think it is important to address the issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, stuff like that. And Dungeons & Dragons is a good way to address that issues because it is so prevalent in our culture. Sadly, the way Wizards of the Coast is choosing to address this issue is completely and utterly wrong and is only doing damage to themselves and doing damage to the movements. You're not helping Black Lives Matter. You're not helping LGBTQT. You're not helping women with the choices you're making regarding how you're addressing the issues. All you're doing is making it worse, Wizards of the Coast. But then you have a history of doing that. But, so, yes, these are the things I liked about 5th edition. I know I brag on it a lot, so I thought it was important to give you a few seconds of my time to tell you, yes, there are things about this game I actually enjoy. Now, I've recently been offered a chance to play 5th edition, and I'm like, you know what, I just got out of a 5th edition game, and it just feels like it's going to be more of the same. I kind of don't want to play it because I don't think there's anything left for me to do as a player with 5th edition, other than trying to min-max and weird experiments that I could conduct, like how far could I get this character while only doing this? My last experiment character was how far could I get a character without any magic items and starting with 0 gear. The only gear he uses is stuff he finds, and I'm backstabbing people with a fork that I stole from a bar, and I'm wearing a bucket for armor because I thought, here's an interesting experiment. Because so many people are so centric with D&D, can I play a character with no stuff, who starts with absolutely nothing, not even basic gear? And the character got to 7th level and, made it to 3 levels with backstabbing people with a fork, wearing no armor before he finally got his hands on a weapon. So it did work. It was a fun experiment, but I don't have any experiments left, and I don't think I could find the DMs that I could be like, hey, this is what I want to do. Can I do it? Because this guy wants me to start at 7th. And I'm like, I didn't build it up. I don't feel like starting at 7th unless I built it. So there you go. Now back to our regularly scheduled complaining. If you appreciate this content and want to hear more, please comment down below. If you don't appreciate this comment and want me to shut the fuck up, also Comment down below. Either way, please comment down below because I cannot know what you're thinking unless you're telling me. Do not debate. Vote with your words. Tell me what you want to see on this channel and vote for Joe Biden. Thank you very much. I will talk to you losers later. Yay, OSR.